for his trip.
Sounds like a memo.
Is he really?
Yeah.
I didn't know. For work again? I don't think so.
No, I think it's
Vacation with the kids.
cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
Yeah, 22 seconds.
Should I warm it up?
Warm it up, yeah. Get all the wires out.
Get all the wires out of the way. So Mark, are you at the airport?
I'm at JFK right now, but we don't want to give that information away, so.
He's where? JFK.
I'm sorry.
He's at JFK.
You are a
I
dedicated
know.
public servant. Thank you.
I know.
We're in the Sky Lounge, and there's a million people here, so it's not quiet, and we're relaxing, so.
All right.
Well, we won't ask you to comment unless you're voting, I suppose.
No comments. I'll just say yay, nay, abstain.
Okay. You can always text. Jeannie has her phone out too, so you can always text if there's any communication issues.
Oh, I can hear you great, but
Okay.
it sounds like it's a little hard hearing me, so.
All right, sounds good. All right, well, I'm going to call the meeting to order. So this is the monthly meeting of the Logan Municipal Council on June 6th. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. We do have Mark Anderson present on the phone as he is traveling, and Ernesto Lopez, our chairman, is excused. So in his stead, I will be chairing today's meeting as the vice chair. I'd like to start with our opening ceremony. I'm delighted, absolutely delighted, to introduce the Senior Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion up at Utah State, Isaiah. He is here to speak with us about the upcoming Juneteenth. So come on up and use the mic.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I promise to keep it brief. And plus, today is picture day, which I usually resent with my family. So not because of the pictures, it's just it never goes well until I see them afterwards. But yeah, I'm here on behalf of the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Utah State University. And coming up in I guess a week now, on June the 19th, Utah State University will be celebrating from the 12th to the 18th a series of events that you can find on our website. You can just Google USU DEI or go to usu.edu/Juneteenth or /DEI. You can learn more about that. You can register. So I'm sorry I don't have like a QR code or something on my back, but I have to promote it a little bit. The reason why that I wanted to talk about it today, Juneteenth historically is a combination of the word of the month June and also the 19th, so Juneteenth. It's a celebration of the emancipation of enslaved people here in the United States, specifically in most cases African Americans here, which was in Texas, Galveston, Texas in 1865, in the 19th century. And throughout our country's history, more broadly or in general, several people at a local level have been celebrating this for decades. So even here in the state of Utah, again, you can see different information on different leads and Pastor Davis and other great prominent pivotal figures in Utah who have been celebrating the emancipation of enslaved people in the United States. The whole story goes is that different Union troops traveled to Texas in 1865 and announced to the African Americans there that President Abraham Lincoln, with the big hat, had signed off on the Emancipation Proclamation, that they were now free. And so sometimes there's a little bit of confusion on, why would we celebrate something in the past, which is always odd when most of us come out of religious context. That seems to be what we do. But also thinking about how the past continues to inform the present moment, and how it can help us make sense, both of the good things that are here, right? Myself, I hope I'm one of the good things. and African-American speaking, right, to a predominantly white audience, right? But also thinking about some of the struggles that we've had throughout COVID, right, with the George Floyd situation that happened, right? Even if there's not always a direct cause, right, to exactly what was going on in Texas in the 19th century and what happened during the COVID pandemic, what we can at least begin to look at as it manifests itself to us is to think about how some of these tensions remain, but also the more and more we understand our own history, the more we can, better understand what to do and how to progress today. I think the challenge is in the United States is starting to just have a more, not that people don't, but a more capacious sense of what it means to be a U.S. citizen, right? I always go back to a story. I'm already at my time, so I'll be careful. I'm reminded of a story. I was actually in Europe, and we were looking at different sites and different buildings. And one of the guys, the tour guide said, "What do you think is older, European history or American history?" And we all kind of thought, well, yeah, it's European history. You have older buildings, you have the Vatican, But he was like, no, it just depends on when you start, right? And so I think Juneteenth can be one of those areas that encourages us to look back at those roots. We have 3 big themes that we use at Utah State in terms that are celebrating. One is to educate, right? The more we can educate ourselves on how the present moment came to be, what the situation was, how it continues to shape how we see the present. The other one is to activate, right? To think about, okay, what can we do about it now? Is there anything that we need to do? How can we, and I'll give you the cheat sheet. The biggest thing we can do is continue, the more and more we understand ourselves as Americans, the more we can create a sense of community. I always say it's very difficult. Sometimes this happens to me and my kids. If I don't know who I am, it makes it very difficult to parent. I'm usually like, go away, stop talking, right? So the more we can understand who we are, the more we can have a sense of inclusion and belonging with each other. But the other thing, along with activating and educating, is celebrating, right? Such a big and pivotal moment, the emancipation of enslaved people in the U.S. If we can continue to celebrate those moments, we used to say in sports terms, we can continue winning. Right? The more we can celebrate our wins together, the more we can look at situations that maybe we don't agree with, maybe we want to see big changes, and we can celebrate the things that we have done well. Hopefully they'll continue. So I look forward to seeing all of you as you have space and time. Like I said, June the 12th through the 18th, come out and celebrate with us. Enjoy the 19th off as a federal holiday, right, signed by both Biden and later on in our own state. But thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being here. So I would really encourage everybody to go. Last year, the speaker panels were amazing. And I believe you have the choir coming back on Sunday,
right.
Don't you? On Sunday, early evening-ish?
It'll be about 7.
About 7 o'clock.
But they'll be rehearsing at 3, so maybe you can sneak.
Get a double dose. Yeah, but it really is, it's, I think you're right, it's important that we educate, activate, and celebrate. So please join the USU family. Saturday, their big event is actually being held at Bridger Park. And you do need to register for that. It's a free lunch, but registration is required. So again, really just a great way to celebrate with our community, part of our past as we look to our future. So thanks for being here, Isaiah. Really appreciate it. All right, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Felt lonely over here.
I'm going to go sit next to Mayor Dan's over there.
No, when I was doing
Oh,
the
when I was
pledge.
doing the pledge, okay.
Y'all went that way.
All right, so at this point in time, I would move to accept a motion for acceptance of the minutes and approval of the agenda. I did send one correction to Teresa, so that will be integrated.
So move.
Second.
We'll do a roll call vote since we have Mark on the phone. So Mark,
Aye.
Jeannie?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Okay. Just a reminder that for the 2023 year, our regular meeting schedule is the first and third Tuesday at 5:30. Our next meeting will be June 20th here in these chambers at 5:30 p.m. Now is the time in our agenda where the floor is open to questions and comments for the mayor and the council. If you have something you'd like to raise that is not otherwise on our agenda, you're welcome to come up, just identify yourself and where you live, and take no more than 3 minutes with your questions or comments.
My name is Aaron Ritchie, 25 South, 200 West. I want to make just one quick comment. Memorial Day was actually established to memorialize the death of those who fought in the Civil War. Actually, my grandmother's grandfather fought in the Civil War, so it really doesn't seem that long ago to think about it like that. First of all, I'd like to commend the council here for accepting public comment. I was in Pennsylvania, I was a school board director back there. I had a public comment at one board meeting that there were 850 people that attended that meeting. And I was shocked to find out that the state of Utah doesn't mandate public comment at all their government entities. So I want to commend you for that, and I can tell you that if somebody takes the time to come here, it's important to them. And I commend you for listening, and it may be city business, but it's really all the people's business. The reason that I am here, as I said, I moved from Pennsylvania here probably about 6 years ago. I've got 35 years in the construction industry. I was a landlord in Pennsylvania. Some of the issues that I see here in this state I'm sorry, not state, but city, there's a lot of immigrant population. And obviously in the construction industry, I see that a lot in the community here. And I really have a concern about minimum standards on housing. And most of our, I'll say, new population or immigrant population, they don't have credit history, they don't have credit checks, they don't have background checks, they don't have any type of rental history. And it is difficult to be able to find, I'll say, some of our better housing in the community. Now, I have read some of the ordinances you have, some of the licensing requirements, and some of what I have found being a one-time inspection of property. Now, the city that I resided in Pennsylvania, we had minimum standards. We had inspections at least every other year. And the minimum standard is basically just 2 receptacles in a room, your arc faults, your carbon monoxide and smoke detectors, and just minimal standards. And we had inspections basically every other year. But I've seen some situations in the city, and oftentimes probably from, I'll call them absentee landlords that don't necessarily live here. And the rental rates are actually as high as what they're charging in some of these new facilities that have much higher quality housing. So I recommend to the city, and I'm not a government guy, I don't look for government intervention, but I can tell you that minimum standards aren't being met in much of the housing, I'll say, at for the community that has lesser access, I'll say, than what other community members have. So.
Yeah. And thank you for those comments. I mean, we agree with some of those concerns. We actually would like to see some inspections, but state code actually precludes that. I mean, Craig, you can clarify, you know.
Yeah, I'd have to look a little bit deeper, but I think that's
Yeah.
accurate.
Like in the ordinance, it said it gives latitude to the municipality. And from what I've read, in your licensing and an initial inspection to comply with current codes.
The initial
But that's not-
inspection, yes, but the follow-up, I think, that's always been my understanding. But we'll look at that
Right.
code
Can I ask-
section again.
Yeah, I'm talking very basic,
Yeah.
When I asked Kimber, at one point in time, he said that it was possible for us to inspect every time a property changed hands, but we were not allowed to inspect.
Well, if that's something that needs to be addressed at the state level, that it
Yes.
definitely needs to be addressed, because as I said, there's really there's an issue here, and it's a safety issue.
I know.
And for instance, if someone's putting in a new ADU in their home, that does allow an inspection a one-time inspection to, again, the life safety issues.
Well, they made it so that the state mandated that the only time we could inspect was by complaint, but people who are in the housing don't want to complain for fear they're going to be evicted. So you end up with this very
Well, you know your housing issues here.
convoluted, yes.
And as I said, these are typically a community that doesn't have I'll say, the wherewithal or the backgrounds to be able to get into what I would call a higher quality facility.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you for your service.
Make sure you signed in, and if you have contact information, we can follow up with you once we find out what the status is with the state codes.
I'll give it to you.
Okay, thanks, Aaron.
Hello, my name is also Erin Bennett, and I am up here also with the equal protection issue. So I just got an email from Craig. I sent you guys an email regarding civil rights violations by Logan City Police. So just as an example, Sarah Hernandez, she admits in a police report, not she admits, but there's a police report where a woman admits to stealing from Sarah Hernandez's business, right? She says in the police report to an officer, I stole 2 Dyson vacuums, and the officer's response was to open the door and invite her out, right? I also have body cam footage of a bunch of officers allowing a woman to go into her business and rob her while she's not there. So what happened was this lady who worked for her, she quit and she wanted her stuff, and Sarah said, you can come on Saturday and get your stuff. And the woman didn't show up. So then Sarah said, I'm going to take all your stuff to Lieutenant Randall at Logan City Police, which she did. And while Sarah was at Logan City Police returning the woman's stuff, the woman, with the help of Logan City Police, went into her store and robbed her. Just took whatever she wanted. One of the officers is heard on the body cam footage saying, keep gathering stuff up. That's happening in our town right now, you guys. Right? And then she was, Monday the 22nd, she was arrested for going to court. It was a civil rights violation. She's wrongfully imprisoned right now. I sent you guys an email. You guys all know about this, and your response was, not my problem. Well, I believe that Logan City Police violating our civil rights is your problem. Is it not your problem? It's not your job to protect us? I mean, do I have to babysit you guys? What the hell is wrong with you? What about the kids? What about the kids that are being taken from their moms by DCFS? What about the suffering of those children? You guys got that? Did you guys get that I sent to the governor? Do you care at all?
I'll just say, I do not recall getting an email from you. The only time I've heard
it. These guys.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, are you guys aware of the civil rights violations? Did you not share that? Did you not discuss that? Like, what is wrong with you guys?
Well, I'll just clarify, the role of the city council is typically legislative and budgetary.
And to protect citizens.
I know, but I'm just saying,
So the thing is that Sarah has been trying to find a resolution to this for over 1.5 years, 2 years. There's this thing called 1983, and it was the whole reason that the 14th Amendment was created. It happened, actually, conveniently, that gentleman, during the Reconstruction era, right? And so what they found is that in communities, the criminal justice system was engaging in cartel behavior to squeeze people out of the market, and that's what they're doing. Like, it's obvious. The Logan City Police, along with the Cache County Attorney's Office and Department of Child and Family Services, they're all working together. And every time Sarah or someone says, hey, help me, and it's not just Sarah, there are a lot of women who are having their children taken by psychopaths. A lot of them. One of these psychopaths is a known sex offender, and she can't see her child. The DCFS told her, you can't see your baby because you're inappropriate behavior. Her inappropriate behavior was that she had an emotional response because her son showed up with a big purple goose egg on his head. She still can't see her kid, and guess where she is right now? In Cache County Jail. She's in jail. Where are her kids? She's not the only one. The Cache County Attorney's Office is engaging in family law and using gossip to file criminal charges on our residents. And these guys know, and they're doing nothing about it. These guys know what's happening, and you know what's happening. It's called collusion. I called the DOJ, so hopefully they'll be here soon. But in the meantime, I want to get these kids back to their moms. And apparently I'm the only one. You should be ashamed of yourselves. It's disgraceful and repugnant. I can email anyone if you want my complaints. I would be more than happy to email them to you. They're all based on my body cam footage and recordings from DCFS conversations. It's all like hard evidence. I'm not making this shit up. Tell our friends.
I haven't seen anything.
Go ahead, Deb.
So I have a lot of things that I like to talk about, but 3 minutes is hard to contain all that stuff, so I'm going to take the slow approach and establish who I am first and then come back weeks after later. So my name is Matthew Pacioretty, born and raised here, then up in Alaska, then down here. I'm a kind of person that likes to get to a certain result if it interests me, but I'm okay with taking roundabout routes to go about that. So an example of that is when I was growing up, I didn't know how to snap my fingers at all. And it wasn't until way later, like in high school, when I found out that you have to have these fingers down. Otherwise, it doesn't really make that sound. So I was sort of a doofus going like that, but found out how to do that. But that wasn't until high school. What I did in the meantime was I learned how to click my tongue. And so, I don't know, it's something interesting that I do. But another instance is I can't whistle, still don't know to this day. But I can whistle with my hands. So when I say that I like to take roundabout methods and I'm okay with doing that kind of stuff, it's just that sort of establishing that mentality. Don't know where to go because I'm rushing through this, so I apologize. I was expecting this only to take a bit of time. But I definitely like to establish this as my personal characteristics, and I use that kind of stuff a lot of time, but I also can understand when it's not useful or anything, or can know when I'm needing to move over to a different tactic. So in instance, when I was up in Alaska, I ended up getting lost in the woods in negative 40, I would say plus, but it's actually the other way, lower weather, in winter with full moon, so that was nice to have some lighting, but you know, you get moisture from your own breath breathing inside your glasses, or you can have your glasses off, so it's hard to see. But while I was lost, I was trying to get people to help me using the clicking noise and the whistling because I could hear them off in the distance, but that didn't end up working, so I had to find a different method, which I ended up just going off into the woods to try and track down some cars that I could hear off into the distance. Then I got out, so I'm here. Anyways, that's just the establishment. Again, I'm Matthew Pacioretty, and you might be seeing more of me later in the future, so thank you for your time.
You're welcome, Matthew. And Matthew, just to be aware, if there's ever any issues you have, the email addresses for all of the council members are online, so
Yeah, I'm more trying to do like a public type thing, but I want to foster that.
Yeah, I understand, but just if there is a specific issue, please always know that you can email us.
That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? All right. So at this time, then, I will turn it over to Mayor Daines for mayor and staff reports.
Thank you very much. We have some board appointments. The first person is a new appointment to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and I believe that's Val on the back row. If you'd stand up for just a minute. This is Val Christensen. You've all received his resume with the email, and we're asking for a ratification from the council members to appoint him to the Parks Board. And we'll do one at a time, and then I have a couple of others. Okay.
I'll move to accept the recommendation of the mayor to appoint him to the Parks and Rec Board.
I will second that appointment.
Okay, any comments? All right, Mark, in favor or not?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Jeannie?
Aye.
Me, aye.
Great, welcome to the board. So I know they'll communicate. We appreciate your willingness to serve. Thank you.
Absolutely, Val.
Great. The next is a reappointment, Rachel Boehm. She actually works for the school district, and she's been serving on the board. It's really nice to have that liaison with the rec center and kind of that cooperative arrangement there. So we'd like to reappoint her. And
She's
also, no, Rachel's not here tonight. And then we'd also like to reappoint Jess Lucero to the Planning Commission. Again, you're familiar with her. She's served one term and is willing to serve another. So those are the other two.
And you don't need us to ratify those?
You could, yeah, we do, but you could probably do those together, especially where they're reappointments.
Okay.
I move that we approve the reappointments mentioned by the mayor.
Second?
Okay, Mark,
Aye.
Jeannie,
Aye.
Tom,
All right.
and I from me. Thanks for bringing those names forward.
Great, and
thanks.
that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
After a contentious debate, this
There you go. All right, we'll move on now to council business. Jeannie, do you have an update on the planning commission?
Yes, at the planning commission last meeting, they approved the revised amended Sugar Creek plan. As we had discussed earlier when we talked about rezone. They approved 4 single-family residential building lots at 19 South and 1100 West. We will see a rezone and conditional use permit for a commercial daycare. And we will also see a rezone request at 675 North 500 West from mobile home to mixed residential low. So that will be, those two will come before us, and there'll be more Thursday.
I actually think we're workshopping one of those tonight. So.
Yep.
All right. In the month of July, the 4th of July falls on a Tuesday, which is our regularly scheduled meeting. So do I need a motion to, how do we do this with having just one meeting in the month of July?
I think just announce it.
Just announce, okay. So I'm going to announce then that we will only be holding one meeting during the month of July. That will be Tuesday, July 18th, since city offices are closed for the 4th of July holiday. Okay, we'll move on to our action items tonight. Our first is Resolution 23-16, which is tied into the 4th of July with Chief Hainig.
As we talked about this last time, this is really a formality unless you want to make adjustments to our prior restricted areas. So unless you have questions, I have nothing to add to that.
This has been pretty consistent, this boundary definition for a couple of years.
It's been for a while. We did add it down to 12 on some of that portion, which actually North Logan followed our suit this past year, and I believe they will do that again to keep that consistent between the boundaries. But yes, we have been fairly consistent for quite a few years.
Just as I know we've had a lot of moisture, certainly through the winter and spring. Do you have a prediction? Are we going to have high fire risk over the summer because of early plant growth?
We certainly have that probability. We don't expect it by July 4th, but by the 24th, yes. The growth will be significant considering the amount of moisture we've had this year. We had seen that in the past, but not, we haven't had a winter like this for several years. So it's always the thing that makes me the most nervous, right, when that season comes, because the risks get high. So any mistake. So we do hold our line pretty conservatively, being down to 12, but we feel like that's, because we haven't had any incidents, that helps historically keep us feeling like we're doing the right thing.
And as normal, you'll be posting signs like on stop
Absolutely.
signs and other road signs to
We will
remind
have
people.
road signs, restricted areas, and then during that, the high-risk times, we do patrol. Both police and fire units, do a good job of patrolling when we feel like it's a significantly high risk, especially during the 24th. We kind of wage that on the 4th, depending on the weather patterns. But if it seems like it's going to be high risk, we certainly up our patrolling.
So east of the river on the island is a protected area, is that correct?
Yeah, we did make some adjustments last year to kind of tie in a little bit with where River Heights is and some of that bank area that dried out and became a higher risk than normal. And so we tried to keep that consistent.
That's up on the hillside, isn't it? Yeah.
So I had heard from someone who lives on Center Street that there is a house that does fireworks on a regular basis year-round, and sometimes they end up in their yard when they come down.
Yeah.
So-
Well, I had that problem in my neighborhood, so, it happens. We try to do our best to patrol and,
Okay,
for work, but sometimes they do it when they're not supposed to.
Give them the dispatch number and they can call that 24/7. If there's an officer available, they'll send them out. Again, that's
Okay.
the non-emergency dispatch number.
okay, thank you.
So will this be posted on the city's webpage, so if people want to figure out
We will,
where I
as we get
live?
closer to the sale dates, that information is posted. It also has to be, per state law now, it has to be posted at the sale sites, at least the non-brick and mortar type, at a larger scale than in the past, to make sure that people are aware when they're purchasing fireworks, that they know the dates and the restricted areas.
I think this area has been proven, and I would move that we pass Resolution 2316 with the boundaries as described.
I will second that.
Okay, any further conversation? All right, so we'll take a vote. Mark?
Aye.
Jeannie?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
No, I agree as well. Thank you, Chief. All right, the next action item tonight is a public hearing. This is on budget adjustments for 2022-2023, Resolution 23-21. Rich, do you want to walk us through this?
4 items to consider. First is request to appropriate $21,569 for police overtime shift reimbursements, $37,000 for it was a donation for the purchase of artwork for the new library, $79,000 for a grant from the state through Cache County for flood mitigation, and lastly, request to appropriate $7,850 of donated funds toward the police annual banquet.
Any questions for Rich before we open the public hearing?
Nope.
No.
All right. This is a public hearing. If anybody would like to address the council on this matter for Resolution 23-21, please come to the microphone, state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes. These always generate so much enthusiasm from those present. So seeing nobody, I'll bring it back to the council for action. Mark, is Mark able to second or second?
Or move.
Or move?
Okay. Mark, you can move and/or second.
I move approval of Resolution 23-21.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Mark, are you in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Tom?
Aye.
Jeannie?
Aye.
And aye for me as well. Resolution 23-21
I
passes.
just wanted him to feel like he was
Like he was part of
participating.
the action.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll now move on to our workshop.
Thank you for my inclusion.
So we'll now move on to our workshop items. We have 7 of those this evening. The first is consideration of a proposed resolution approving member contributions to the Utah Retirement Systems Contributory Retirement Plan. Ambry, would you like to walk us through that one?
Yep. So with this one, this is an annual resolution that we do bring to council every year because it is part of the budget that we do propose for next year. So what it is we are proposing approving member contributions for our employees that are eligible. And in this resolution, it's where 100% of the contributions are picked up by the employer for tier 1s. And then for tier 2s, we pick up all employer contributions, but we do not pick up the employee contributions for tier 2s. So it's the same resolution that we've done this year, we're proposing it again for next year.
So in tier 2, do employees automatically get our contribution, or do they only get it if they are participating?
So they do. Well, there is a requirement from the city for tier 2s, but the URS back in 2011, they changed the retirement system to where depending on how well the fund is doing, employees may have to contribute to their own retirement. So they did make that change back in 2011, but we do have to make contributions, yes, on behalf of them.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ambry? Okay, thank you. You are also up next for
Yes, I'll
ordinance
just sit here.
23-17. This is always a tricky one for those that are
Yes.
sitting up here.
So this second workshop item, this is where we are proposing a 4% pay increase for council and mayor wages. We would keep the $300 vehicle allowance for council members the same, and we would keep the $6,000 vehicle allowance the same. So again, we are proposing a 3% increase for council and mayor, and it's consistent with what we're proposing across the city as well for all employees. We're proposing a 4% increase.
No, say,
You said 3 on council.
you said 4, 3, 4.
Sorry, I
That's
meant
okay.
4.
So it's 4, 4, 4?
Yep, 4, 4,
Okay.
4. 4 for council, 4 for mayor, and 4 for
Employees. Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. That's okay. I just don't want to make,
I'm throwing out a lot of numbers.
but then the
So that's
count-
where we would increase the council salary to $18,550.76, and the mayor to $118,270.29. And I know I've talked about this last year, so back in like 2008 to about fiscal year 2018, you guys never approved raises for yourself, you know, you're wanting to give it back to the community. But this is where we kind of have fallen a little bit behind, so we do propose that you guys look at taking this 4% increase, because we also want it to be attractive to qualified candidates down the road that do want to run, and we do want those qualified ones to run for council, run for mayor. So.
I know last year, I believe we talked about the fact that you had done a survey of like kind of prevailing wages for councils and mayors. Could you share some of that information?
Yeah, so I did do a survey with other cities that are comparable to us. So like Spanish Fork, for example, their mayor is part-time. That mayor's only paid about $30,927. But their city manager, who our mayor is basically our city manager, she's heavily involved. She's doing the day-to-day operations of the city. The Spanish Fork city manager is paid $207,293.
Wow.
And their council members are paid $17,796, but they are also eligible for benefits, where we just pay you guys a salary. You guys aren't eligible for medical, dental, or 401k contributions like some of these other council members are. So that would be a bigger increase besides the $17,000 that they're paid. There's benefits as well. And then if you looked at cities that, like Murray is close to us in population, their mayor is actually full-time, and so is their city manager. So their mayor makes $130,624, and the city manager makes $175,448. And then their council members are $17,079, but they are eligible for benefits too. So that's where we, like I said, because those 10 years you guys didn't approve increases for yourself, we've kind of fallen a little bit behind, but some cities also offer benefits for council members where we just do wage increases.
I think the system here works because it was always an awkward thing about saying, we want to raise and we have the control. You know, it's just always an awkward thing. Most of us didn't run for the money, and we appreciate what we can do. You know, it's a good system.
I think even when people have been running, they didn't realize they were going to get paid for it too. They were
Yeah.
more
That's
doing it
correct.
as a service and not to be paid for it. But we do pay for it.
So I have a question too. Is it, and I don't know whether that is something that will happen, but is it possible for us to split the two and have it be, you know, like say we decided we didn't believe we deserved a raise, but we would like to give one for the mayor? Can we split it?
I think we can.
We don't advise it, you can. I'm just saying.
You don't advise it, but
We
you
don't advise it, but we can.
Okay, I just wanted to know.
And the last couple of raises, I've just donated my increase back to the city for a particular project. So, and I'm happy to do the same thing again. But again, it does keep the salary in line with, you know, what the prevailing rates are. The same with yours if you adopt the increases, just so.
So we could adopt the increase and do the same thing.
Yeah, you could if you wanted to.
And then Rich won't yell at us for not doing it.
He won't be disappointed
He'll be
in us.
disappointed like he was previous years. Okay, any other questions or comments to Ambry on this? Okay, this will this be a public hearing next? This will be a public hearing at our meeting on June 20th. I'm sorry, I really wish that there was still snow on the ground.
We don't.
Just kidding.
There is, you just have to.
I know you just have to hike up. Thanks, Amber. All right, our next workshop item is Resolution 2323. Darren Farr is going to walk through a property line adjustment fee schedule.
Thank you. Again, Darren Farr, city engineer in the city. Let me pull up my presentation real quick. We, in the engineering department, we review several types of property line adjustments, and there's you can have two properties that are next to each other that want to adjust their property line. You can have two subdivisions that are next to each other, or a property within a subdivision, and then you have to do an amendment to the plat of that subdivision if you want to adjust that property line. We have new rights-of-way that need to be dedicated and easements that need to be dedicated. And then also the vacation of rights-of-way and easements. And we, as I arrived at Logan and started looking at what our processes were, we had one process for boundary line adjustments, which is just changing the line work between two parcels of land. And we had an application for that, and we had a fee that we charged. Did not, as I started to dig into, okay, how is this fee calculated? We couldn't really find some of the background that went behind that, and so it was determined that we really needed to put together a cost of service study to kind of see what it costs us to do this work, and identify. I felt it appropriate to identify separate applications for these different types of processes that come through the city, and then there's an appropriate amount of money that would go along with those applications. And so this really is a process to identify, to help us solidify those 4 different processes, and then to talk about what is reasonable cost of service for that and have that discussion. And so again, here are the 4 different types of boundary line adjustment. We have minor plat amendments, rights-of-way and easement dedications, rights-of-way and easement vacations.
So where do they get to go on vacation?
Yeah. So we keep talking about the vacation process is the most difficult, it takes the most time because it has to come to council for approval of the vacation. And when we get those requests that come in, we cringe a little bit.
So Darren, before you go any further, we have rights of way and easement vacations that are generated by a property owner, but we also have them that are generated by your office.
Absolutely, yes.
So do you separate those that I assume?
Same process.
Same process, but there's not going to be a fee.
Right, there wouldn't be a fee for...
Unless you're going to pay it.
On our own. We technically could go through that process of charging ourselves the fee if that was...
No, but is there a way to separate those out in your conversation so that everyone understands that ones that are generated by our department are not assessed to a property owner?
Yes.
Or anything like that?
Yes.
So that there's that separation of the 2 kinds of vacations?
That's a good point.
You know, the long one and the short one?
Exactly.
Sorry.
That's a valid point, because if we go and purchase property, or if we need to vacate it right away for a project that we're doing, for example, the fire station, we're going to be bringing a vacation for easements that are within that new fire station property. We need to vacate those easements so that it's not encumbered, that property's not encumbered by those easements. And that's something we're doing internally on our own.
Right, but I mean, even if we often do it, I know when Herm was on the council, he would always wonder whether there was any value to the vacation that we were making, because we had generated it. But I just want to make it clear that no property owner would be charged for an internally generated vacation.
No, that's a good point, and we can make that note.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Darren, it seems like the fees are a reasonable amount, but it would seem to be that if you did the cost of service study, that there ought to be some calculation to say so many hours at such a rate equals that, so that there's.
I'll show you that. We've done that level of effort.
Thank you.
Yep. Let me get down to that slide real quick.
But just that justifies it.
Yeah, just give it some justification, exactly. Again, this is the purpose is to we want to establish an application process. This is really for the benefit of the applicant so that we have an application that they've submitted and that sets a time frame for us to be able to get that work done, and rather than an ad hoc process that sometimes gets slipped through the cracks. And so this gives us a firm process and an application that they go through, paper trail, and helps us keep that going in the right direction. Like I said, we did cost of service study. We'll talk about that, and then it really is up to the council. We're going to show you what we feel is the cost of that service, but it's up to the council to decide if that is an appropriate amount of money or not. So this is just a snapshot of what we're doing in terms of here's our procedure for doing some of the work, and this is an application. So these are some things we've created. Like I say, we're doing it for all of those different processes. This is more administratively on our end, but just so you can kind of see how that's coming together. We also provided some examples, and we worked with our legal staff to come up with typical dedication documents. So if you want to dedicate a right-of-way or a utility easement or a sewer easement, here's some standard language that we've approved with our legal staff. And we use that as a template, and that doesn't mean that we have to stay with that, but this is a starting point, and then if there's some change that they want to make, then we'll review that as needed. And then we have some examples of what we want to see in terms of the detail of the exhibits and the legal descriptions. So here's our proposed fee structure. As I mentioned, in the past we just had boundary line adjustments, and we've kind of run minor plat amendments into that because it's a very similar process. In the past we charged a $100 fee for that. The proposed amount is $460. We'll go into that detail. Right-of-way easement dedications are pretty straightforward. That just requires the mayor's approval, and that fee is much less. And then again, vacations are expensive, and they take a lot of time. So here's a fee breakdown. I'll just go through one. We have it for all four of them. I put the most expensive one here just so we can kind of go through it and kind of see what it takes to pull something like the vacation, a right-of-way easement or vacation together. So we have a permit tech, which is our administrative assistant. It's about 2.5 hours. By the time she's receiving the information, processing it, getting things set up for us to review. We review things electronically. She gets all that coordinated. She takes any comments we have and she gets them back. So there's a lot of back and forth. Then ultimately she walks down with the applicant to the county and has a document recorded for them. So there's 2.5 hours. That's probably, all these hours I think are minimum hours. They're not middle of the road. They're not maximum. This is probably the bare minimum it takes us to do the work. For the city surveyor, it's about 6 hours by the time they end up reviewing the information, working through any discrepancies that need to be worked through, going out, and they have to prepare the petitions that have to go out. We actually have to go out and find all the addresses for properties within 300 feet, mail those out. We have to go put a sign up at the property for that. All that takes time and effort and work on that person's part. And so this 6 hours is, we've done some of them that have taken twice or 3 times, I don't know, since I've been here in the city. So we do have some posting, and this is vehicle time. We have mailing costs. We involve our planners in this process, so we give them a half hour. They don't have too much involvement. We just want to make sure that what we're doing doesn't affect any of the zoning for the properties. A little bit of time for me, and then a little bit of time for a public works director who will come to this meeting and do 2 presentations to council on those vacations. And so, again, if we use our dollar amounts, we worked with finance to get these, and HR to get these dollar amounts for the individual employees. We add that up, about $740 for that process. And like I say, those other processes, we have that detail here as well for those if you want to go through them, but it's much less than what we've just described for the vacation process. And I kind of talked about this. The one additional thing I'd like to ask is that if we have any, we like to keep it to 3 reviews. Sometimes we'll have an applicant that they don't want to, we'll say, hey, you need to make this change, and they won't make a change. And we'll go through a number of different reviews, and we'd like to have the opportunity to assess additional fees if we go past a 4th review. Now, if it's something that we've missed and we're trying to get it caught up, and then that's on our end, and we wouldn't make that additional charge. But if it's something that we have repeatedly asked for them to make a change, and then for one reason or another haven't made that change, if it's reasonable, we would like to be able to have that opportunity to use that as a tool to help get us to a point where we can move forward, and that's the idea.
So Darren, why would you do 3 reviews on the same thing? I'm sorry. I would just think if there was something wrong, you would just give it back to them, and when they fixed it, then you'd look at it again.
So it depends. We do this through the construction plan review process as well. In that construction plan review process, there could be as many as 50 or 60 different comments, and sometimes they'll only address 30 of them, and they'll send it back in. And then we'll look at it again, well, there's 30 more to address, and then they'll address 15 of those. And it's this iterative process that I like to get a hold on and stop having to go back over and over through those processes. And I think if we had a mechanism like such as this to be able to keep that to a minimum, or if there is a need, and maybe there is a reasonable need that they have, then there's a process to go forward with that reasonable need. But I don't expect to see that happen on these types of documents. These are more straightforward.
Yeah, I was thinking, you've got this application, and if you say, well, you've got to change this, right, I would think they didn't bring it back until they changed it. They didn't just say, oh, I don't feel like it, look at it again, right, see if you've changed your mind.
They can be very complex documents, and I totally agree with what he's saying, because you might get 60% of them corrected, and the other 40% are not.
That's construction documents.
Well, so it will happen. I'll give you an example of where it's happened with these types of documents. The hospital, now we're talking very complex. They have the hospital property. They have 2 different subdivisions. They're commercial subdivisions. One's a condo subdivision. One's a traditional commercial subdivision. And they're acquiring property from both of those subdivisions. And that process of acquiring property from 2 different subdivisions, and one of them being a condominium subdivision, which has created a lot of additional challenges, and the law isn't really clear on how you address some of these things. We've spent quite a bit of time, effort going through those processes and having them address comments, and easily have had. I don't know that we've gone through more than 3 reviews, but we're at 3 reviews, if that's maybe where we're at, is our 3rd review. But it's gone through a number of different review cycles and comments. So that's an extreme example. I don't think that happens very often. It's a very complex project.
But it can.
But yeah, so there are some examples out there where that could happen.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Any other questions?
Yeah, that was my last slide, is question. So what do you have?
Will you bring that a proposed additional fee to us, or is that a yes or a no, then you'll bring it? What is?
So here's how I've written it. Let's see. So, for example, if we look at the boundary line adjustment, minor plat amendment, I have 3 different notes at the end. One says, if a vacation is required, that fee shall be provided in addition. So if you have a boundary line adjustment, you're adjusting your boundary line, and you're also going to need a right-of-way, or usually it's a public utility easement that has to be vacated and relocated, then we've asked that we collect both of those fees, because it's 2 different processes. We've also said if a public hearing is required. So a public hearing is required if they can't get all the property owners to sign on. So that's through the state law. They've provided that provision that allows the property owner to move forward. But if one of the property owners protests, and it needs to go to a public hearing. So we've asked for additional money for that public hearing, so increasing it by 1.5. So if it was 460, it would be 690. And then that third bullet point is fourth in each subsequent review, an additional fee up to half of the original fee shall be paid as determined by the city engineer. So it does limit it to half of the original fee, but it does give some discretion to the city engineer to say, well, how much is really justified based on the amount of time we spent. We're not in the business to make money. It's not what we're here to do, but we do want to be able to justify the time we spend on the project.
Will you include this breakdown in the next submission?
Yeah.
I didn't see this.
In the attachments.
In the attachment.
I will definitely make sure you have a copy of that. I thought we had got that to you, but I apologize if you haven't seen it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Mark, do you have any questions?
No questions right now.
Okay. Everybody good? Okay. We will now leave Darren in the hot seat, and we will be ready to talk about the Transportation Master Plan. This is Resolution 23-19.
And this is what I'm excited to talk to you about tonight.
You weren't excited about the other?
I was very excited about that. I'm really excited about this. First of all, I do want to introduce, we have Alex Oliphant. He's our project manager that's been the project manager for this project, and he's helped transition from Bill, who started this project back in 2018, to myself, and so he's the glue that keeps us together. We also have Ted Cannon. He's our consultant. He's worked for Forex Engineers. We also have another, he has a counterpart, Kevin Croshaw, who is not here tonight. He had a baby this afternoon, so he was not able to make it. So we're excited for him.
Is he feeling okay?
He may be a little woozy. I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll check in with him later. But we have, as a team, we've been working pretty diligently to bring together this transportation master plan. We feel like this is a tool that we use on a daily basis through our planning, to planning and through our development process to help identify where we need roads that will help bring Logan into the future. One of the most exciting parts about this master plan is planning those areas that have been identified as our future annexation area, and having a basic plan for how we develop in those corridors and in those areas, so that we can have an intelligent conversation with a development or developer as they come through the process, and they can have surety of what they're doing, and we can have an assurance of what we're doing, and knowing that the council is supportive of those things that we're proposing. We'll start off by talking about how this has been taken forward. Bill, back in 2020, he put together a public meeting. It was during the COVID timeframe, and so they did it online, and they received a total of almost 600 comments from the public. Now, this was also a meeting that was tied in with our Main Street, with the UDOT Main Street project or study, that the traffic transportation study that they were doing. And so not all of the 600 comments came directly to the Transportation Master Plan, but those 2 projects were put out together. And so we generated a number of comments through that, and we've been able to use those comments to help guide and direct us through the process. we established a technical advisory committee to help us take a look at the progress that we're making on the transportation master plan. So we had them look at it in 30, 60, and 90% stages of development, and included our own city council, public works department, Logan City Community Development Department, Logan School Districts, UDOT, Utah State, 6 neighborhood representatives, Cache County School District, Cache County Engineering, Cache Metropolitan Planning Organization. Neighboring municipalities were invited to participate, as well as different various trucking companies. And so we felt like we tried to reach out to every stakeholder that would have or want to have involvement in helping us shape the future of our transportation master plan. The purpose, again, to kind of go back to what I was talking about earlier, we're wanting to identify what our existing needs are, what our future needs are, going further as we continue to build Logan. We're looking at a 35-year planning horizon, so that takes us to 2050-ish. And the recommendation is that in the master plan is that this be updated to every 5 to 7 years. This is a living document. This is not, we're going to approve something now and it's never going to change. It will set the stage for a lot of projects that we're going to do, but it's a 5 to 7 year plan. So things that go beyond that time frame are subject to our next edition of the next update to this master plan. And this has really been based on a lot of good comments from the community of trying to integrate this master plan with all the other various transportation-related master plans that are out there. And we'll speak to that more as we go further on in the presentation. We talked about this being a planning and prioritization tool, and how it will help us structure unplanned areas. This is a very wordy document, but this is really want to get into how we're integrating this master plan with all the other master plans that are out there. And so here's a list of the different master plans we've really worked hard to include. So Logan is one of the top ones, Logan City's bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Anytime we build a street, we are looking at that master plan to see what kind of sidewalks, bike lanes, other different facilities that are identified in that master plan to make sure that we're incorporating those into what we're doing with our roadway improvements. Cache Valley Transit District, very important part. We see that becoming even more important as we move into the future. So we coordinated with them. In fact, they gave us a letter of support for our transportation master plan. Cache County Transportation Master Plan, so this is the CMPO. And they have their regional transportation plan and travel model, and this travel model is what we've really used as a foundation for our plan, because it really takes a broad view of what transportation needs and how much traffic is being generated as we move into the future. It does that heavy lift of trying to identify what projections are for traffic in the future of the Cache Valley area and how that impacts Logan. We also looked at the USU transportation study that they have, and how we interact and affect that. We also looked heavily at our neighboring municipalities to make sure that we're coordinating with them. We don't want to do something that we don't want them to do something that is not going to really work with us. And that can be interesting how those negotiations happen. We've had to have some meetings with North Logan to really identify how to make our systems work together. But I think we've come to a good conclusion between all municipalities with the plan that we have. So some of the comments that we've received identify that we're placing this master plan places vehicles at the top of the list, and it doesn't really address some of the other transportation needs. Some of that is because there are other master plans, and the idea was we weren't wanting to step on the toes of other master plans. We weren't trying to change those master plans to fit our master plan. We wanted to integrate with those existing master plans. I mean, it's a dance, right, to try to integrate things that are happening at different years. Our bicycle and pedestrian master plan is from 2015, so we're 8 years old on that one. So how do we marry an 8-year-old plan to our current transportation master plan? I think we've done a pretty good job of doing that. We worked with our planning department to make that fit together as best as possible. But yeah, there's challenges inherent with trying to pull those two together.
So as you use this as a long-term planning document for 35 years, and you're trying to incorporate an already 8-year-old bike and ped plan, which probably needs to be upgraded.
In the next couple of years, yeah.
How do you, during the course of planning for roads, is that included in that plan? Because a lot of the bike and ped master plan included on-street dedicated bike lanes.
Right.
But if you only just reference it that you coordinated it, it doesn't really give people the sense that you are truly developing a multimodal transportation plan.
So, and we received that comment, and we took that to heart, and we said, how do we really try to incorporate that more into our master plan? And so what we've done is, and we'll go through this more towards the end of the presentation, but we've taken each project that we have as a vehicle project, a roadway project, and we've identified which constituents go with each project. So which Cache Valley Transportation District project will go with that, which bike lane project will go with it, which trail project will go with that construction project. And so we've tried to show that graphically. Here's our roadway project, and here are the different projects from these other master plans that go with it. And we put some symbols there so people can see, oh yeah, this one's going to have a trail, this one will have bike lanes with it, and so forth. But we've tried to do that. It's a little difficult. But again, we have to take the perspective. I know it's a 35-year plan, but it's a 5 to 7 year time span in terms of how long it's going to be left as is before we go and revisit it again. So if we look at it from that approach, it gives us time to reassess and make sure that we're going down the right path.
Because I think that in the unplanned areas is where you're going to have the most gray area with respect to, because the bike and ped plan didn't really cover the unplanned, not yet annexed kind of areas.
Right.
And I believe that our bicycle and pedestrian use has changed dramatically in the last 8 years.
Yeah.
And so whether or not we may have to revisit sooner to address that growing use might be appropriate. But anyway.
I totally
like it.
agree with that.
Okay.
When those two documents aren't on the same document, it can make it a little bit challenging. And maybe that's something we look at is do we try to marry those two documents together? Maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't.
Well,
we have that conversation.
I think that when the bike and ped master plan was initiated, not when it was completed, but when it was initiated, UDOT and CM, a lot of the planning organizations were only dealing with cars, period. And so it was sort of a breakout, like, oh, this is a portion of our transportation that we need to address. And it may be that now that things have moved more closely aligned, it might be a good idea to integrate those into the same document.
Right. And like I say, we do integrate those in terms of construction, because we wouldn't just construct the road without trying to construct the sidewalks and the bike lanes and the trails that would go along with it per those other plans. And so, integrating that more maybe a solution.
Yeah, it would be a good idea.
Our current transportation master plan was from 2011. So if you can imagine, we are we're over our 5 to 7 year time
Right,
frame.
right.
But we do feel like there's reason to go forward with this now, and with the idea of, let's talk about some of these immigration ideas and how to try to merge these things together a little bit better.
So I know you have a lot to talk about, but can I ask one more question?
Sure.
As we move forward and as we begin to integrate all of those different things, because I know that the transit district is starting to look at a lot of its, it will be changing some of its short-range transit plans. But if our plan says this road will be this, and CMPO says, oh no, it's going to be this, who wins?
That's a very good question.
Is it
I would
the
say
source?
Because, there's a difference between this, the road that's this, and the road that's this.
So, my experience has been, since I've been here, and I have admittedly a short time frame here, so
I know, and
I don't know some of the history of how things have developed, but I've seen them work very closely with us. The county's actually developing their own transportation master plan right now. I think this is their first one. This is different than the CMPO, right? You got the county and you got the CMPO. So they're developing their own master plan, and so we've been working with them and trying to coordinate with them on roadways and what they're proposing to develop to make sure that the plans match up. And we've had great success with coming up with solutions and identifying roadway, we call them classifications of what that means, the size of the roadway and how much traffic they'll handle. So I've had great success since I've been here. I won't say that will always be the same, and I won't say there won't be any differences of opinions, but it seems like we're pretty good at trying to come to a conclusion of what that needs to be ultimately. And we have some hard decisions to make going forward. We'll talk about some of the other studies that are happening. We have our Western Arterial study. We have our Main Street study that UDOT's doing. We have our I-15 to
10th West.
Yeah, 10th West study. There's some really big decisions that need to be made through that process, and we'll have to see how that can all come together. I'm pretty sure we have a lot of say, and we have a lot of our opinion is not taken lightly because we generate most of the traffic in the area. But yeah.
Well,
Saying that,
you know what road I'm talking about.
yeah, I know what road. Yes, yeah. There's some challenges, and I think but like I say, I think they've been very good at working with the elected officials and with our staff to come up with something that works well for us, but as well as for the.
But there is
campus in
no, for people who don't know, I'm talking about 4th North, between 1st West and 6th West in particular. There's no unilateral changes that are made by any other organization that does not involve us in the planning part of that process, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is absolutely correct. We would have
I just want to
we
make
would be
sure.
able to control our destiny in that regard.
Okay.
I just wanted to make one point. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in detail. We're going to talk about levels of service. When we talk about roadways, you know what, I'm going to push pause on that. We're going to get to a slide that talks about level of service. So we don't talk about it twice. Just real quick, this is, our master plan is based on modeling of traffic. So we like I said, we use the CMPO's travel model. And that's the county-wide background travel model that they use to identify how traffic is generated and where it's going to go. And it's based on land use and trip generators, or what are some things that people typically go to. They want to go to a grocery store, a Walmart, they want to go to a movie theater. How much trips do that generate? So they have this background model that helps us to pull all that information together. We also have over 200 traffic counts in our system that we keep track of, where we've gone out and counted traffic, and some of those are older, some of them are newer, but we've done that quite a bit, and we keep all that history so that we can go back and take a look at how does traffic actually move in the city. So we have the projections, and then we know how it actually moves in certain areas, and we try to marry that together. If you can imagine, that's a complex assignment, and that's why we've hired our consultants to do that level of effort for us.
That's why you're an engineer and I'm not.
But he's a special kind of engineer.
We have transportation engineering. They need a special branch of engineering just to do that work. And so the results end up becoming a level of service map. And we'll talk about roadway classifications, and we'll talk about levels of service. So we have 4 different types of roadways in the city. We have local roads, that's those roads in the subdivisions. Our right-of-way is 60-foot wide. Sometimes we do a 66-foot wide gridded street. We try to keep our grid that's been established for a long term, and that we feel that is an appropriate system of moving traffic. We have collector roads. Now that right-of-way goes to an 80-foot wide right-of-way, and that carries more traffic. It's still 2 lanes in each direction. It has a center turn lane. That's the only addition for the collector road. And then we have arterials, and those are the roads that are supposed to move lots of traffic. And those roadways, they're 102-foot wide. They can have 5 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, plus a center turn lane. It's really for our 1400 north, our 10th west, although 10th west is really UDOT, but those types of facilities that actually move lots of traffic. And then Highway 89, 91 is more of an expressway, I would say, limited access onto those roadways, and it's really to move traffic at high speeds through the area. And so if you look at it, your mobility is greater. You're able to move from one place to the other is greater when you have your larger roadways, and that as you get down to your local roads, your access becomes greater. So you want a faster traffic and more volume on these bigger roads, but your access to those roads are limited, and that allows things to move safely. And then as you get to your smaller roads, that access becomes greater, but you want to keep those traffic speeds and volumes down. So that's kind of the idea of how we use these different types of roadways.
Which is always the challenge, that you widen the road and then the speed limit can go up. Right? Like we talked about that in the past. That's like that delicate balance. Like now all of a sudden the road is wider, so the capacity is
It doesn't necessarily mean that the speed has to go up. You may be able to widen the road and have more lanes, but yet keep the speed limit at the same posted speed. So that is a possible option of doing it. So let's talk about levels of service. So there's in traffic engineering, there's 6 different levels of service from A to F, and it just looks at how many cars are on a road and what is the spacing of those cars, and when is it as safe? And when we talk about safety, how is it safe for the cars, but is it also safe for the pedestrians that cross the street, the bicyclists that are riding alongside the cars, all the other transportation modes, the Cache Valley buses that are on the street as well. How do we integrate all those modes in a safe manner? And so we look at this level of service. So what is acceptable? And in general, most cities choose C or D to be an acceptable level of service. I would say most choose D. Some say C is what they want to shoot for as an acceptable level of service. But it's really just, again, about the volume of traffic on the roadways. And so this chart down here on the very bottom is really small, but it just goes through each of those classifications, right? Those 4 different roadway types. It actually breaks arterials into 2 different types on this one. But it says how much volume of traffic can we put on those roadways to get to these different levels of service. And so if you can imagine, so this is how we're really shaping our master plan. We're looking at, we're doing counts on our roadways to see how much traffic is going down those roadways, and then we're saying, okay, how does that fit into these levels of service? and it helps us generate a map like this. So this is what our map looks like today. We look at our roadways, and we identify what the classification is, and we say, how much traffic do we have on that roadway? And is that an acceptable level of service, A through C? Is it an acceptable level of service, D, which is kind of on that borderline? Or is it unacceptable, E, and very unacceptable, F? So as you look at our current transportation network today, you'll start to see where we have some orange and some red. And Main Street, of course, is going to be red or orange, and we all know that. But there are other areas that are not on Main Street that are red and orange as well. And so we say, okay, we're starting to see roads that are not acceptable. And we have a choice to make. How do we do that? We also took a look and said, okay, we know what the projections are for traffic. So what does that look like if we go out into 2050 and we don't do anything? If this is the do nothing scenario, and you can see how almost all of our roadways are red or orange, very, very few green or yellow.
Is that based on like peak travel time of the day? Like how do you, because obviously 2 o'clock in the morning is going to be very different from 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So that acceptable, unacceptable, is that just averaged over the day, or how do you?
I believe this is peak hour.
Peak hour?
Yep.
Okay.
So we look at peak hour, which is usually in the evening between 5 and 7 o'clock at night. This is our peak hour traffic.
My question was similar to what Amy was, because Main Street is terrible for several hours.
Yeah.
And then it's just fine.
Right.
So if you average it out, it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But most people would grade it as not very good because you have to wait 2 turns of the light to get through someplace.
Right.
That kind of.
Right. Yeah. And it's a very valid point. For much of the day, or it's usually the AM, there's AM peak when people are going to work, and the PM peak when people are coming home from work. Those are usually the 2 most traveled times of the day. And that's when we see these levels of service go into the red or orange condition.
And these are per day.
Per day.
Per day.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's, and this, again, this is the standard of how traffic engineers look at it. They look at it from what is the worst condition during the day and how. And you look at it from, again, it really goes back to safety. Is this a safe condition to leave our roadways in this condition for all the other transportation that go, for the vehicles, but also for all the other users of those roadway facilities?
So can I ask a really random question, but it might be for you?
Yeah.
If you do nothing and you just let it, what happens?
So
We'll move away from Logan and go back to Chicago where there's less traffic. No one wants to live there anymore.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's like, we don't talk about whether the road is safe, it's got enough blacktop or whatever. But what happens if you do nothing? Do people just find alternate places to drive? Or do they just complain more?
Well, I think what the projections are showing is that we get to this level of F service where you're severely congested and it's difficult to move around.
And safety issues, right.
And then the air quality goes down
right.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's a collapse of the system.
Okay, all right, that's what I needed to know.
Okay.
Will that generate a different type, an alternative means of transportation? Maybe that is, but we're putting people in an unsafe condition to get to that point. And so some of our comments that we've received is, there's too many people moving in, this just is going to encourage development to happen, and this is really causing problems and from an environmental perspective and a safety perspective. And I won't say that it's not a part of that, but there's the solution to controlling the population or controlling how many people come in and move into this. It's not a transportation specific issue. There's so many different aspects to that issue, from a zoning perspective to
Water.
what's that?
Water.
Water perspective, yeah. Is it how are the utilities, or how cheap are the utilities? That there's a number of things, and it really needs to be looked at holistically from a variety of different aspects in terms of making a decision of if that's the idea. If that's the idea, is to reduce the growth, then you need to look at that from a more comprehensive perspective. Is what we're saying. We feel like this keeps our citizens safe. It provides a safe mechanism to get our folks around.
And it's based on growth models that are
it's based on,
accepted more regionally.
The growth models, I believe they're actually put together by the state. I mean, the state helps the Cache Valley, the CMPO.
Sounds like a
They
Kim
help
C. Gardner
they help
thing.
the CMPO put that all together.
Okay, sounds like a Kim C. Gardner thing.
Yes.
They seem to do a lot of that stuff.
Right. Those types of folks help identify what those projections are going to be and help try to put a number to what that growth is going to look like. And so it's not something that we're developing here internally without looking at anybody else, but we're using a statewide process to come up with those numbers and projections.
Okay.
Can I, before you get going, Mark, I know you need to jump off to catch your plane. Is there anything that we need to discuss under other considerations before you go, or are you all set?
I don't think so. I think we're all set, and I'm sorry I can't be here for the vote for the RDA, but I vote yay.
All right. Thank you for taking time to join us today. Appreciate it.
You are so welcome. Thank you, and y'all have a great night.
All right.
Bye, Mark.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Just as an anecdote to answer Jeannie's, I have two partners that lived and worked in Houston, and we all know that they don't have zoning down there. They just kind of let it happen. And they would take several hours to go a couple miles. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I went to North Logan, actually Hyde Park, 10 minutes, 12 minutes. So we enjoy a fluidity here, and we expect that. And I suppose a strategy to making it clogged is to say, well, then get on the bus. It's a forcing of a lifestyle change. And I appreciate the planning, the forward. But it's also a balance. Well, we can talk about it.
It really is a balance of how do you try to accommodate all the needs. And that's really been what we've tried to accomplish with this plan. Let's look at a couple more slides. So we talked about level of service today. Level of service in 2050, we don't do anything. This is our next slide, solving the balance. We're looking at, we try to look at which roads should be improved to meet a level of service of D or better. Some roads we just say, you know what, this is really not worth making this a wider road. There's so much impact to the community to do that. So we've elected not to increase the level, make that a better level of service. But for the majority of the roads, we have said, yeah, let's increase those sizes or provide additional roadways to accommodate a better level of service, a safer level of service.
So having a different roadway might be, you say, I'll just pick a road, First East. Mm-hmm. And you say, okay, we're not going to make First East wider, but we are going to make Center Street wider because they go in the same direction and whatever.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of thing you're talking about? Where you...
I don't know that we really looked at it that way. It was more...
and that's just random. I'm not saying you're going to do either one, but...
Exactly. It was more, does it make sense for this roadway to expand this roadway and encroach onto the adjacent properties to achieve a better level of service? Is there a value in doing that? And there were certain roadways where we said, no, that's not the case. And one of them was Center Street. The original master plan, as we developed it, it showed it as a arterial roadway. And we thought, well, Center Street, making that an arterial roadway is probably really aggressive and harmful to those businesses and homes that are on Center Street. And so being able to accommodate improvements as a collector road on Center Street, we said that that's a reasonable approach.
Okay. Okay.
As an example. So this is an exhibit that shows what our existing roadway network is today in terms of functional classification. Here's our collector, we have minor arterial. We don't have any major arterials that are ours, those are UDOTs. So yeah, the major arterial doesn't really show up here, but you can see, so the major arterials are usually the most interesting, I guess, to talk about. You can see those on 14th North, 10th North. We are showing a major arterial for a portion of 800 East, right there by the campus. And then the rest of the arterials are really more the UDOT roadways. The purple are our collector roadways. And so we'll see those, and we try to keep a good spacing. You want good spacing in your roadway. You don't want to try to lump those too close together. And so those are our existing, and this is our existing network based on our existing master plan. So let's look at where we're going to go. And so we start to see over on the west side of town where we're starting to plan out those new areas that will be in our annexation boundary, or annexation limits that's been identified, which is 2400 West. So you see where we've started to plan those roadways and identify where they'll go. And some of it is, okay, this is a 50,000 foot view of where the roadways need to go. And in some respects, we've looked at it a little bit closer, saying, oh, there's a water body here. We're not going to take a road through. We're going to make a turn here. So we've done a little bit, but it's really high level. It helps us get a general path. As we move through the process, we'll fine tune those detailed locations of where the roadway, but in that general corridor that we're shooting for. So this is a great map. If you're going to be looking at it in the future, we recommend that you take a good look at what this map is and what we're planning for these areas. As we look at other changes that we're making, we have a future major arterial. This is, we call this the Western Arterial, the Western Arterial. This is something that UDOT studying where this arterial would be located. And we'll talk a little bit about those UDOT studies in a minute.
Is that park? What road is that you do?
This is 3200 South in Nibley, and UDOT's doing a project to make that go through with a light, and this is 2000
West.
2000 West,
Okay.
and it's going to transition into 1600 West.
Okay.
And as you get over here on the north side of town, it comes around the ponds and then goes back out to 2400 West.
Okay.
That's been on the books for several years.
Yeah.
This alignment that's in our 2011 plan. CMPO also recognizes it. But like I say, UDOT is doing a study right now to say, is this the right place? Is this really the best place to move traffic in our western area?
Okay.
And they have some different options that are available, different roadway functional classification types. Some are bigger, some are smaller, and so they're working through those recommendations. They've had several opportunities to sit down and talk with residents and staff and help understand what the needs are in the area. But like I say, we use this as a tool, so we will use this map as a development comes in, and we will say, hey, we have a roadway planned in this area, and we need you to dedicate right-of-way for this roadway. Okay. And so on this existing Western Arterial, we already had several, I don't know how in terms of miles, but several areas, or several developments have dedicated this additional right-of-way. And this is a 102-foot right-of-way, so it's not insubstantial. This is a good wide right-of-way, and so we've been pretty successful at that. If that arterial were to change to a different location, it's likely we'll just make this a collector road and keep that same alignment, since we've done so much work to preserve corridor through that area. Let's talk about projects real quick. So the master plan also helps us identify and prioritize projects. So this plan I'm trying to think how many different projects do we have?
Total, I think we had 62.
62 projects. Again, it's all the way out to 2050, so it's going to take us a while. Rich will have to come up with a lot of money for us to do that.
Rich is smiling, he's like thinking this is gonna be the
So
best thing.
these numbers refer to a project number.
And there's in the master plan document, there's a table of what those numbers represent. So this I just added circles here to where our 0 to 5 year projects are going to be, and we'll kind of go through some of those briefly. And then here's our 5 to 10 year projects, and then I don't go past that because hopefully we'll have a new master plan by that point, and that could change in the future. So here's our projects, and if you look at it, I've highlighted in red projects that we're already working on. So we started this back in 2018, so we've actually been doing some of these projects that are on this list. So the red ones are in construction right now. Our 100 West Bridge project, 1800 North project. So a lot of these are in construction. All the green ones are in design right now. So we're in design, getting those projects ready to build.
So where are the little identifiers for bike and ped and?
I think I put this slide together before we added those on. So I have an example of what that looks like.
There's an example later, but the list in the now manual does have on it.
Okay.
I'll show an example.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize, I put this slide together before we had those incorporated in there. In construction, the costs, we have about $18 million worth of improvements going on, and the design projects are valued at about $13 million. Just to kind of give perspective, total 10-year value of projects is $83.9 million.
What is that face, sir?
Say that again.
Just dividing it up.
He's making some faces over there at those numbers.
You may disagree with how much we're going to spend here. We'll see how that all works out.
Because by the time we do it, it'll be $166 million.
Perfect.
I mean, I do want to talk about funding here because that is a very important part. Where does all the money come from to do the funding? So we have some things. So a roadway incorporates a lot more than just asphalt and curb and gutter, right? We have bus stops, we have stormwater management, we have power, water, sewer, bike lanes, trails, all these other aspects. And so we get funding because those other items are in our roadway. We get funding from a variety of different sources to help us fund projects. We'll look at this next slide. This really tells our picture.
So do we ever put in empty pipe in the roadways so that we don't have to have X, Y, and Z corporation come and dig up the park strips later?
Absolutely. In 10th West, we were just looking at it today. In 10th West, there's miles of sewer line that is not connected to our wastewater treatment plant. It's empty pipe in the roadway. They wanted to build it so that they didn't have to go back and build it in the future. So yeah, we absolutely look forward to try to make sure we're not.
Of course, it'll be too small when you get there.
We've hopefully planned appropriately, so that's not the case. This is a pie diagram that helps us identify our budget, our capital budget for 2023. This is where we're getting our money. If you look at, I'm pretty proud of this, and it's not me, this is really Paul and Sam. They do a great job of getting grants for the city, but 42% of our budget comes from grants that we've
Are these federal grants, state grants?
Federal, state, yes, both of those.
A lot through the COG, which is then federal money coming to the state, to the, and
So
the
the COG,
NPOs, so.
where does, I thought, okay, it doesn't go through CDBG?
Just the CDBG would just be the
The
sidewalk.
COG is separate from that?
Yeah, Council of Governments, so that's all the mayors in the valley. They have a certain amount of funding that they vote annually to allocate.
Okay.
Applications come in, there's criteria, they screen those annually, and then there's a ranking system where they vote. And again, the legislation that funded that, so part of that comes from that extra 0.25% sales tax that the county passed.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the funding, increased on that, and as additional sales, as we've had additional sales tax, that funding goes up. So the legislation says it's supposed to be capacity projects. What are some of the other criteria?
Safety.
Safety.
Capacity, safety.
So again, there is
Number
certain
criteria.
And other communities get some as well, but I think, and sometimes the other communities may think that we get more than our fair share, but again, you just think, what are the major corridors, the way we,
Yeah.
roads through our valley or our city connect parts of the valley, so.
Okay.
So some of the other, like I say, we talked about Class C. This is a tax that we get a portion of 9% comes from that Class C, those Class C funds from the state, transportation tax funds. A little bit of general capital goes into it. Streets have their own capital account. And then we use water and sewer. And some of this is actually their own projects, but every time you do a water line or a sewer line, 99% of the time that's affecting the roadway, so it impacts our roadways, and so they help fund our roadway projects as well. So here's that example. I promised I would show you. So these are the symbols that we have for the different types of master plans. There's CPDD routes, pedestrian improvements, existing or future cycling routes, bike lanes, and county trail and active transportation plans. And so you can see here where we have Park Avenue from 600 South to Golf Course Road. We have a pedestrian improvement that will go along with that. So that just says.
So did you do that for the not 10 to the 1 to 10 as well?
Yeah, we did this for everything. This is just an example.
Okay.
Of what we did. If you look in the plan, you'll see that for all of our projects.
I like it. I like it.
We feel like this is when you look at a project, you can kind of see what are all the different pieces that go into it. What other plans should you be looking at to make sure that your project is comprehensive in nature? Again, I told you we would talk a little bit about UDOT studies, our Main Street corridor study, and I know several of you have participated in that. Our West Cache corridor study, we just talked about that, and then our I-15 to Logan City corridor study. The idea here is we don't know what the results of those studies are going to be. This master plan, we feel like we don't want to wait any more time to come to a resolution. Some of these studies, like the Main Street study, has been going on for some time now. So we want to finalize this plan, but and we've added some language in here that basically says once these other studies are finalized, we can do an addendum to this study to incorporate those recommendations.
If people want to, they can weigh in right now on that US 8991 study. They're accepting comment, I think, through the end of next week. Is that right, Holland? That US 8991? I think it's ending pretty soon, but.
Is that a public?
It's a public comment. Yep, it's a web survey.
I've been to the meetings, but I can't remember the
deadline
on the comment.
If I'm not mistaken, so.
Yeah, I know they're pushing hard to move forward with that study. That's really the end of my presentation. I'm open to questions and comments and things that you would like to see, different changes, anything you'd like to propose.
Actually, I think I interrupted you with questions all through the presentation.
That's great. It's great dialogue.
In the beginning, you talked about technical advisory committee, and I know that you incorporate, or at least try to coordinate plans, but it would seem to me that Cache Valley Transit District and the bicycle committee ought to be part of that technical advisory committee.
So CVTD, they were part of the technical advisory.
They didn't show on that.
Let's go to our list there.
But they didn't have
It's very pleasant.
I know they've been involved in this, and like I say, they've written us a letter.
they're not on the sheet that shows that.
They're not on this sheet.
Yeah.
They are on the full list, they are on the committee.
I apologize, I missed them on my sheet.
There's a list in the plan.
I need to add that.
I see that you integrate, but they're not on there. Also, it would seem to be that the bicycle committee ought to be represented on that technical.
Okay.
Community development was represented on it, and they.
No, I'm talking about the bicycle, there's a
The advisory committee.
advisory.
Yeah, and I know the county person was involved in this, the she left, and now there's a new, so there's been
Okay,
some
but
give and
that-
take on
The trails
on the
coordinator.
trails coordinator, who is the chair of that committee. So they have
There's citizens that want to have a voice in it, and I think so. The other thing is, there's some specific things I'd like to do input on, but I don't want to take up time in here. Do I just call
Send me an
you?
email.
Send you an email?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Or talk to me. We could just sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, all right.
And to that point, I know,
we received a couple letters.
yes, there's a couple letters, and I was on vacation last week, and I didn't see them until
Did you have
tonight.
to pay for that, just like we just approved
Yeah.
those fines? Did that apply to you too?
And those vacations were hard
That
and
vacation.
costly. Let me tell you, I'm paying for it.
This is an important study.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
And public ought to be aware on this as well. And so I appreciate the effort that you're making and the clarity that it has. There's a lot of good detail in here.
I really feel like we've tried to accommodate, incorporate a variety of different ideas and thoughts. The one that we just have the hardest is don't improve the roadways, leave them as is, and that we feel like that's not it's not something we want to recommend going forward with. We feel like from a safety perspective, for not only vehicles but for all modes of transportation, that having a level of service of D at least is something we should try to accomplish going forward.
So besides looking at today's agenda and the Logan City Council section, is it easy for the public to find this on our Logan City website right now, or do they have to actually go to like our meetings and look at the agenda? Is there a way to put it on the page that people can click and see it? Because I think you're right, Tom, there's a lot of people who probably are curious as to what's going on, and I know sometimes I'm even frustrated by trying to find things that are there. So if we can make sure that would be, I think that would be helpful.
That would be a great idea.
Otherwise, you have to search through our agenda and find the attachment. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, we will get a draft version of this up onto the website ASAP. Perfect. That's a great recommendation, actually.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to make a snarky comment about, I know we can make wide streets and fast streets. Can we make smooth streets? Is it possible?
Actually, one bit of data in the Transportation Master Plan that I thought was really interesting was the pavement report. So they've actually commissioned a firm to come in, I guess they video.
I've noticed.
And so then they give you a percentage of the streets that, have good, acceptable for, I was actually fairly impressed at the number that were considered, within the good quality, because you always worry about that. So.
I really think it's due to our chip seal program. We have a fantastic chip seal program. And it's hard to work and live around the chip seal project when it's happening, but it really does a great job of preserving our roadways. And our roadways take a fair amount of abuse with the snow plows and the salt and the winter maintenance that has to happen to
A whole bunch
keep
of
those
that
ways.
chip seal ended up on my park strip.
I know.
And I don't know if any of you have
Generate a
driven
lot of-
Canyon Road lately or 6th East. They're trying a new program where, you can explain it better. They kind of take the surface off to try and level it out, and then they'll come back and do the chip seal later to again help
Help keep it
the
smooth.
level, help smooth it
I saw
out.
that, and I'm wondering what they're doing, if they're preparing for something. But it really is better. So thanks for whoever did that.
Leave that to our street. I'll leave that
Yeah,
to
the
our
streets department, that's one
They do a
thing that
fantastic job.
they're trying kind of a new thing, so.
Okay, thank you very
Other
much.
questions or comments? Thanks, Darren. Very comprehensive. Appreciate it. Mike DeSimone, come on down. You're the next contestant with ordinance 2318.
It must be getting later.
It's a code amendment requesting an amendment to the land development code for district and corridor zone uses.
Yep. Ordinance 2318, the request on this is in the Land Development Code to modify the use table in 1711 to take out waste-related uses as conditional uses in the CS or the IP zones. And the rationale behind this is that as the city has changed the way we collect trash in the county, we're now focusing on the city. We don't want other providers elsewhere bringing in those types of facilities in Logan City.
So it still is permitted in our public zone?
Correct.
In our chart, but we're removing it from any commercial service zones?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, any questions?
That was easy.
Yep. Okay, the second one.
This is a different rezone.
Ordinance 2319, Little Wonders rezone. This is the site up off of 14th North, 1362 North, 4th West. It's the old Children's Justice Center. Little Wonders West is the facility, used to be the old family place. Run a daycare facility there. They're trying to purchase that,
The
rezone
old
it.
Children's Justice Center?
Yes, correct. So the site, it's this building right here, the existing building. Their site wraps around it, so it makes good sense to extend their daycare facilities into this building. The proposal, it's currently planned as mixed residential, and the zoning is mixed residential, but the proposal is to go from MR12 to community commercial. And this is what it looks like in the street. So no changes to the building. Some interior work will be done to facilitate daycare, but other than that, nothing else. Any questions?
So it's currently zoned MR, or that was?
It's currently zoned MR12. The request is to go to community commercial.
So even the existing daycare is zoned MR?
No, it's.
But that's CC?
We rezoned that a couple years, well, a few
Okay.
years ago down to CC.
Okay, gotcha. All right. No questions. Do you have any questions, Tom?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Long wait for a short presentation.
Hi, Rich.
Hey.
Are you going to frown at us about this one too? It's not $89 million, but.
It's just the way I look.
Okay, so our next workshop is budget adjustment, resolution 23-24.
So 2 items, and then I'd like to add one, we'll talk about it. $5,310 for U.S. Department of Federal Cases reimbursement for the police department, and a request to appropriate $30,500 for after-school programs that are going to be done during the month of June and then through July as well. And then the request is, because this is our last meeting where we can workshop items, we had a late addition request to add, appropriate $9,189 for a fire training reimbursement. So if you'll allow us, we'll add that to this workshop item.
So did we receive that reimbursement?
We just barely received it.
Okay.
It's a little confusing, but some of these we plan for and we know are happening. This fire reimbursement, it's a really vague grant that if you spend it and if we have money and if we like you, we'll reimburse you. If we don't, then we won't. And so it's not one that we would bring to council prior
And they
to
must have
getting
liked
to
us.
get it. So they like us.
So you liked it and we did it, and
Yeah.
and they still have money left.
Yeah. So money left, and so they'd like to reimburse us, so we'd like to get that in the budget.
And we have to get it in before the end of the year.
Payment for the training efforts, or is it a building something that they train on, or what are they doing?
It was a training that they said, if you participate in this training, we'll reimburse you.
Okay.
Maybe.
Potentially. And so they did. Typically, the way the process should work is we bring it to council, then we do the project. But we have a collection of these, a few for the police department where they participate with the state in various activities, and then also one with the fire where nothing's guaranteed. And so we do it, and if we get reimbursed, we bring it to council. If we don't, then it was on us.
Okay.
So if, with your permission, we'll add that to the action item, which will be our last action item for the year, which will be on June 20th.
Does he have our permission?
He has my permission.
You have my permission. Tom?
How long do I have to think about it?
2 seconds. 1,000.
He did already. Thumbs up.
All right, thank you so much. Any other considerations from our council members?
Well, I will say that I spent today with the Water Smart program that will go all day tomorrow and part of the day on Thursday. And it's an interesting step toward a community, a county-wide conversation about the future of water resources in the valley. And I'm very honored to be able to participate, and I think that it's going to have some good outcomes in our ability to work with other communities in the valley to establish some objectives for the whole valley. So, that's all.
Thank you.
Teresa, would you mind giving us an update on the elections? I know that tomorrow is the last day people can file. Do we have?
Tomorrow at 5 p.m. is the last day to file, and at this time there are 10 candidates.
Okay, so we will have a primary in
We'll have
August.
a primary August 15th, and all the candidates are, the list is posted on the website, and it'll be good.
So I still have time to sign up if I want to go for another tour.
Yes. You can change your mind. You have 22 hours.
I'll be 92 when I finally get.
You have until 8 to 5 tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
I'll
Thanks,
think about
Teresa. All right, if there's nothing else, all right, I will adjourn this meeting of the Logan City Council. And now I would like to convene the meeting of the Logan Redevelopment Agency. We have one action item tonight on our docket. This is Resolution 23-20 RDA. It is consideration of a proposed resolution adopting a survey area to initiate the potential creation of a community reinvestment project area plan.
That's a lot of
It used to be RDA, but now kind of is RAPAPA.
Lots of acronyms.
Lots of
They tend
acronyms.
to change every few years, so.
So last meeting, we discussed authorizing the study, correct? Is that what we did? Can you refresh me on what we did?
Yeah, actually what, and you stated it, but you're considering approving or adopting a survey area which is shown on the map. So it's that quadrant there by the Cache Valley Mall from 14th north to 10th north. And when you adopt the survey plan, the survey area, at the same time, you're authorizing the preparation of a project area plan. So that would be the next sequential step.
Okay.
We bring that to you. In fact, we've got that slated for July 18th. Once that plan's prepared, which it mostly is prepared, we'll be finalizing that. Then we'll post it. We'll notice all the property owners in that area, the taxing entities, certain other agencies that need to know about it. People have comments relative to that, they can, send those to you. And then on July 18th, like I said, we're planning on conducting a public hearing to review that plan where you'll be able to discuss it more as an RDA board, people can comment on it, that sort of thing, so.
Okay. Well, since it isn't a public hearing, I move approval of Resolution 23-20 RDA.
I'll second it. We don't need any comment or do it.
There's no public hearing.
There's no public hearing. But do you have any other questions or comments, though, for Kirk?
Nope, I'm
At
good.
this point in time? Nope. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Mark's
Any
fine.
opposed? Mark's up in the air over the Atlantic.
He actually said aye before he left, but we can't count
Yeah,
it.
we can't count it. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll look forward to that on the 18th.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Being no other business, we are adjourned for the night.
Well done. Expedite.